What's up, everybody? Appreciate you being here. Wanted to let you know before we get into the show, there's a couple of easy ways that you can help me with it. With ideas, problems, solutions to whatever you find interesting, anything from a word to an essay, just send it to me. Through the comment section, wherever you listen, on Instagram or Twitter, I'm on both at The Best Idea, or straight to the email, bestideapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can support it in other ways. You can rate it wherever you listen it to. That's probably the easiest. Subscribing to the YouTube page is very helpful. The most direct way is Patreon. Patreon.com/thebestidea. $1 a month just to show some support. If you do $3 a month, you'll get early access to the Stop the Presses episodes. You sign up once, you don't have to think about it again. I really appreciate your time. And here we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stop the Presses episode for the week. So the first thing on the list today is something from New Atlas. It's written by Ben Cogsworth. And the headline is Sight Restoring Bionic Eye Proceeds Along the Path to Human Trials. So it starts, there may be new hope for people with certain types of blindness as an experimental sight restoring device has been deemed safe for implantation. It still has to be tested on humans, though, and it will likely provide a fairly rudimentary form of vision. Known as Phoenix 99 Bionic Eye, the prosthesis is currently being developed by scientists at Australia's University of Sydney and the University of New South Wales. It's intended for use on patients with blindness caused by degenerative conditions such as something called retinitis pigmentosa, in which the retina is compromised but the optic nerve remains intact. The system incorporates a small camera mounted onto a pair of glasses which images the scene in front of the wearer. Its output is converted into a wireless signal which is transmitted from the camera to the communication module implanted under the skin behind the patient's ear. What a time to be alive. Now, it seems it's pretty specific forms of blindness that this can work for, and as it read a minute ago, that it's going to be a pretty sloppy form of vision. But, I mean, come on. What an amazing advancement. Now, up until now, it says they've only tested it on sheep. They've implanted in sheep and their bodies seem to not reject it. But anyway, I just thought that was fantastic. So there's some heavier stuff as we go down the list. The next thing is out of the New York Times, and it has to do with the Women's Tennis Association. And as you probably have heard, there's been a lot said about China and this organization. So the headline is the tennis chief taking on China over Ping Shui. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm mispronouncing her name, I apologize. But New York Times, Matthew Futterman says on November 2nd, the tennis star Ping Shui, in social media posts that were quickly deleted, accused Zhang Goli, a former vice premier of China, of sexually assaulting her. The Chinese government removed all mention of Peng's accusation, and coverage of Peng from news media outside China has been censored. She largely disappeared from public life, and Simon has been unable to communicate with her despite repeated attempts. So she came out publicly and accused this guy of assaulting her and has gone dark since, except for some of these would have been described as very, hostage-like phone calls or emails that she sent, where nearly everyone that has received one that has communicated with this woman over her career says is just not the way she talks, the way she writes, the way she communicates. And we know there's a history of the Chinese government doing things like this, but this is the first time that I know of where somebody with some authority is actually doing something about it. So it goes on November 13th, Simon went public with his frustration, demanding that he and the WTA be able to speak with Peng independently, that Chinese officials conduct a transparent investigation into her allegations. So not only does he want to talk to her, they have to find out if this is true or not. He says if they do not comply, the WTA will consider removing its 9 tournaments from China, including the tour finals, moves that could cost women's tennis perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars over the next decade. And on Wednesday, Simon followed through on his threat, announcing that after weeks of failed attempts to communicate with Peng and no sign of an investigation or evidence that this woman can speak freely, the WTA was immediately suspending all of its tournaments in China. And so you think about that, and then think about the NBA and movie production companies and the like over the years, recently over the years. We went over this in another episode, that have immediately issued apologies for making the smallest verbal errors in everyone else's view, but these egregious things like mentioning Taiwan as not part of China because it's not, or criticizing the government, things like that. And you have this guy not only makes the threat, backs it up. I'm only wondering, where is the, Presidential Medal of Freedom? That shit should have been droned over to him by now. He should be wearing that on the news. And so it's the Women's Tennis Association that we're talking about. So the scope of the association is not huge. You wouldn't expect, what I mean is you couldn't expect necessarily an association like that to boycott China for the fact that they have 1 million people in slavery, as they do right now. Not that that would be a bad thing, but it's kind of outside the purview of a sports organization. You could at least make that argument. So as soon as something enters this realm of tennis, you have somebody that actually puts it all out there and pulls the trigger. And this guy is a lifelong tennis player. Steve Simon. Played through college, played a couple of the majors, went on to be an administrator, must love the game. I mean, you can picture the guy. Known for being one of these people that's always in contact with players and coaches. He got famous inside that organization for helping somebody else get the job as his boss. I mean, is just seems to be somebody who is known for doing the right thing for the right reasons. A rarity. And now he's in the top spot. So it goes on in the article to say Simon explained that he chose the word suspension to signify his hope that China would eventually accede to the WTA's demands for her to speak freely and for an investigation to take place. I love that part. Doesn't back off an inch. Doesn't say, okay, if we can just speak to her and she's okay, that'll be sufficient. No. We have to make sure she's okay, and you have to make sure that this ain't true. Absolutely love this. It says he's also hunting for new investors and sponsors who can help replace the prize money and revenue that the tour stands to lose by abandoning the world's most populous country, a lucrative but complicated market. He says, I'll continue to reach out and use every avenue available to get this to an appropriate resolution, he said. If it ends up that not being their preference, then we will not be operating in the region. All the balls for this guy. All the balls. And so the example has been set. The Olympics are coming up. What are we going to do? Do you send athletes and delegates from our country to the Olympics? Well, as it's done since it's got here, the current administration is going to allow athletes to go, but not going to send diplomats. That's what we announced. We're not going to send diplomats. The thought being, the people that want to compete in the Olympics have been training relentlessly with that in mind. And it would be unfair to keep them from playing in the games just because it's going to be in Beijing. And that is just a sack of shit. There's got to be something more important. You could just play a fucking game here. Take some amount of money that's being wasted on some fucking thing else and give every athlete $50,000 and tell them to do the right thing. But we're not going to send diplomats. There won't be anybody in suits and very fancy dresses going to very expensive dinners and sitting in very nice studios or boxes watching these games. And I bet that hurts. But imagine not seeing any U.S. presence at the Olympics at all. That sends a message. But the goal, I don't think, is to actually do trying to send a message to us that they're doing something. But if you really want to do something, you do what this guy has done. We go with the Steve Simon model of, no, this is an all or nothing situation. Now, the government, the WTA, like I said, you could argue that they didn't have to take this stance before now. But as soon as something comes to their organization, this is how they handle it. The government doesn't fucking have that excuse. They're the ones that are supposed to take into account the fact that there are 1 million slaves in China. That's what they're supposed to do. Among the other things, intellectual property theft and just all the things that happen in China that are all over the place. Every week you can see different stories about the way their government operates. And shit's hitting the fan. And they don't even bring up Peng, this tennis player, when they're talking about it. Now it's because the Uyghurs are in these concentration camps, which they are. And it's horrible, but you're not doing shit if all you're saying is, we're not going to send diplomats to the Olympics. Think about that. There's 1 million people in slavery. There's a famous tennis player who's now saying that had the absolute guts, because God knows how her life is going to turn out now, had the guts to come out and say that someone high in the Chinese Communist Party assaulted her. Let's assume it was rape. And this is our response. We respect you so much. I'm not going to send Secretary fucking Blinken to watch the Olympics. It's pathetic. But Steve Simon, that's a name. Presidential Medal of Freedom for that fucking guy. The next thing I have is, after amputating wrong leg, doctor fined more than $3,000. It's called Local 12 is where the story is. And it says a doctor in Austria who botched a surgery for amputating the wrong leg on a patient has been fired. The surgeon removed an elderly patient's right leg, but it was supposed to be the left. The accident happened in May and was discovered 2 days after the operation during a routine bandage change. I don't know what in the process of bandage changing brought out this problem. Maybe checking the paperwork while you're changing the bandage. I don't think better late than never really applies. It says after the mistake was realized, the patient was told he would still have to have his other leg amputated as well. Well, I guess maybe that's what happened. When they went to change the bandages on the leg that they cut off, they realized that whatever the hell was wrong with the other leg was still wrong with the other leg, and they checked the paperwork. We could guess that that's what happened. So the doctor of the clinic gave a public apology, as you would expect. And it says that the incident was a result of a sequence of unfortunate circumstances. The doctor was sued for gross negligence, and this is when we get to the $3,000. You would assume that there would be a lawsuit from the person who now had both of their legs cut off, or a spouse of that person, or children. Somebody is going to sue for this, as they should. This family should be able to recoup something. And according to a German newspaper, the 43-year-old doctor said there was a flaw in the chain of command in the operating room, and that she doesn't know how she could have marked the wrong leg. She stated in court that she made a mistake, but denied gross negligence. I love when people say things like that. I don't know how that could have happened, but I sure know how it didn't happen. It's not my fault. There's no Alec Baldwin pulled something like this recently when he came up about after he killed this woman. He said that he pointed the gun at her because she told him to, but he never pulled the trigger, and the gun went off. And so he doesn't feel any guilt, he said, because he knows in his heart that he didn't do anything wrong. And, I mean, he looks like he's completely full of shit. But same thing here. I know it wasn't gross negligence that led me to cut off the wrong leg. But the court found her guilty. And the fine was $3,053. That's it. $3,053. I mean, she was fired. But she's since moved to another clinic, and half of the fine has been suspended. How are things going in Austria? Like, are they hard up for surgeons in Austria that they need to keep people like this, these whoopsie type motherfuckers? The Upper Austrian Health Holding, the organization that runs the clinic, said in a press conference that the incident was investigated and the rest of the surgery team was required to go through safety training. Now, that was just a fine from the court. The patient, who since died from what they say are unrelated causes. I don't know how. What is it? Cancer? This has got to be the most unlucky guy on the planet. He lost both of his legs and died of something else. But he was married, and his wife sued. She received $5,600. I'm lying. So that I was lowballing it there. See how the journalist in the beginning highballed it, said more than $3,000 when it was $3,053. It was $5,651 that she received in damages. Yeah. So I'd say, unfair compensation. And a torturous abuse of the term more than. So the next thing I have is also about the government, and a running theme that I have is the need for the populace, us, the royal we, need to spend a hell of a lot more time paying attention to what politicians do, what people in the government do generally, rather than picking these stupid fucking teams and pretending that we're on opposite sides when a lot of the time we're kind of on the same side, and it's all of them that need to be watched. But this one is secret CIA files say staffers committed sex crimes involving children. So this is from BuzzFeed News, written by Jason Leopold and Anthony Cormier. And it starts off, over the past 14 years, the CIA has secretly amassed credible evidence that at least 10 of its employees and contractors committed sexual crimes involving children. Though most of the cases were referred to U.S. attorneys for prosecution, only one of the individuals was ever charged with a crime. Prosecutors sent the rest of the cases back to the CIA to handle internally. And it goes on to say that means basically it's possible they lost their jobs or their security clearances. And they cite in here, it marks a striking deviation from how sex crimes involving children were handled in other federal agencies, and it links to an article about the Department of Homeland Security and the DEA. The DEA found someone working for them had been exchanging messages with an undercover FBI agent who was pretending to be like a 12 or a 14-year-old boy or something like that. And after they sent a lot of explicit images and messages were sent from the contractor to this FBI posing as a child, and he was fired and prosecuted. That's not what happens in the CIA, apparently. They resist the prosecution, they say, because it could reveal state secrets. So 10 is a very low number in such a big organization, but 10 is quite a bit high enough to make sure that all 10 face very serious retribution, you'd think. Like, if I told you that it was 10,000, you'd imagine, first of all, that can't be all of them, because if you have that pervasive of a problem, like the Catholic Church, you know that you're missing a lot. It just makes sense. And you could also say, well, fuck, we can't catch them all. There's 10,000 of them. We got to do something with the entire organization. This is, from what they found out, just 10 people. So you'd expect something horrible, the worst possible consequences to come to these 10 people. So one employee had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was fired. During an investigation that ended in August 2009, an official with security clearance acknowledged having sexual contact with 2 girls ages 2 and 6 and downloading illicit images while working for the CIA. Did you catch that part, acknowledged? Keep that in mind for a minute from now. The Inspector General started a broad inquiry and attempted to identify the victims despite the admissions and the evidence that investigators found on his devices. Prosecutors declined to take up the criminal case. They told the Inspector General that there was mishandled evidence. Mishandled evidence. What evidence? Well, the investigators found that he had extensively downloaded abuse material, such as 63 videos of children between 8 and 16. The man regularly used government Wi-Fi to download the material. He distributed it to others. He brought the photos back into the U.S. after he returned from a trip overseas. And so when they talk about mishandled evidence, they are citing the fact that the girls in the videos had not been, quote, previously identified child pornography victims, making it harder to prove they were minors. That's what they're hinging this on. There is a picture of the documents that the CIA was forced to release, and that's important because it absolutely shows why journalism is important. If you don't think journalism is important, stories like this should change your fucking mind really quick. Without good journalism, me, never know anything about these sorts of things. And granted, it's not like there's an uproar in the streets about it, because obviously it doesn't get around as much as it should, or people don't have the right reactions. But they're doing their job. And there's a picture in the released file that says admitted to having inappropriate sexual contact with a then 6-year-old. 2 questions. Number 1, how much more do you need? Number 2, what is appropriate sexual contact with a 6-year-old? Why is that word even in there? I hate euphemisms. I hate euphemistic language. Admitted to having inappropriate sexual contact, molesting a 6-year-old. I understand you got to write it legally. What the fuck ever. Molesting a 6-year-old. But some of the other evidence was mishandled. What more do you need? He works for the government. A second employee purchased 3 sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. No charges. A third employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. There's no record of what happened to him. There was a contractor who tried to arrange sex with an undercover FBI agent posing as a child. He just had his contract revoked. The former official who reviewed the declassified Inspector General reports characterized the concern from CIA lawyers as, "We can't have these people testify. They may inadvertently be forced to disclose sources and methods." Well, I know it's not probably as simple as all this, but you change your fucking sources and methods if you have to, if that's what you got to do. We're not really in the business of sacrificing children and their futures for sources and methods. Well, I mean, we shouldn't be, I guess. We shouldn't be. The official who noted the agency has had a problem with child abuse images stretching back decades said they understand the need to protect sensitive and classified equities. However, for crimes of a certain class, whether it's an intelligence agency or not, you just have to figure out how to prosecute these people. And yeah, you just have to figure out how to do it. You've got no video right now happening of this Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Do one of those if that's what you got to do, so that your sources and your methods don't get out. But this is a prosecutor not wanting to pick shit with the CIA. They kick it back to the CIA, who's not going to want to go too hard at their own people, and there you go. At a symposium in 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. That's a direct quote from him. The amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. The child abuse revelations are drawn from unprecedented number of releases of reports by the CIA's Office of the Inspector General. BuzzFeed News gained access to these documents after a decade-long pursuit, including 13 public records requests and 3 separate Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. So, does anyone listening here know how to file a FOIA? I sure as shit don't. This is what I mean about good journalism. BuzzFeed News has broken a lot of stories, but they have the means and they have the professionals that know what to do to get to this sort of information. Most of us wouldn't even know where to begin or have the resources of the time because we're doing other jobs. But this is why journalism is really important. Good journalism. And they go on to say, as is typical of intelligence documents, the records have been heavily redacted. Among the information that's hidden are the names of the accused employees and contractors and details about their jobs at the CIA. The agency cites privacy reasons, national security, and a federal law that exempts the CIA from disclosing details about its operations. I mean, of the 10 workers who the Inspector General found had committed sexual crimes involving children, 5 were fired or reassigned, 4 others were referred to the Personnel Board, which investigates classified leaks and is responsible for the safety of CIA facilities. It appears that at least half of the sexual abuse investigations originated with a confession. And this is why I was pointing out that earlier. Half of the sexual abuse investigations originated with a confession. Now, why would they confess that? The documents do not spell out the circumstances surrounding those statements or whether they emerged during grueling, full-scope polygraph examinations. To get into the CIA, to stay at the CIA, you have to undergo this, apparently. And they can probe every part of your life. It says, during those screenings, one former intelligence official told BuzzFeed News it's not uncommon for a candidate to admit unlawful behavior in order to prove they aren't lying. People are saying the horrible shit they're doing, but by the time they're found out about it, they hear that they're probably not going to get the job, and if there's an investigation, even if there's an investigation open, they have time to destroy evidence and things like that. Journalism is important. Support it if you can. And the last thing I've got has to do with this shooting that just happened in Michigan. It's from AP News, and the headline is Michigan parents found in building, bond set at $500,000 apiece. So it's James and Jennifer Crumbley, and their son just murdered 4 people at his high school. It says the judge imposed a combined $1 million bond Saturday for the parents of the Michigan teen charged with killing 4 students at an Oxford high school, hours after the police said they were caught hiding in a Detroit commercial building. So these people tried to just ghost the cops. Their lawyer had been saying the entire time, they're going to turn themselves in. They're just scared for their safety or whatever, and they were found hiding in this building. It says James and Jennifer Crumbley entered not guilty pleas to each of the 4 involuntary manslaughter counts. Jennifer Crumbley sobbed and struggled to respond to the judge's questions at times, and James Crumbley shook his head when a prosecutor said their son had full access to the gun used in the killings. Well, obviously he did. He had the fucking gun. They argued that he didn't, and his lawyer, the parent's lawyer said that the gun was locked, but he had the gun. He shot people with the gun, so he had access to the gun. If it's locked but he knows the combination, that's access. And the article goes on to say that Ethan accompanied his father for the gun purchase on November 26th and posted photos of the firearm on social media, saying, "Just got my new beauty today," McDonald said, the prosecutor. Over the long Thanksgiving weekend, Jennifer Crumbley wrote on social media that it is a mom and Sunday testing out his new Christmas present, and it's a picture of the gun. Obviously, this school shooting was horrible. They all are. But they're not uncommon, so why pick this one out? Because they're going after the parents. We have to do something to curtail these school shootings. Every time it happens, there's just a lot of yelling with different ideas, but not much ever actually gets done. A big portion of people just lean on that we can't do much about guns because it's in the Constitution, and the other ones go the other way. But either way, we have to fucking do something, and don't give me all this shit about, mental health, because that's just proven to be another abstract idea. No one knows how to implement that, what it even means. I mean, identifying people with a problem is one thing. Doing something about it is quite another, because what do you got to do? You got to infringe on their constitutional rights. You come down to the same problem you come down to with guns. I mean, think that through. What mental health strategy could we use to make a difference? I really don't even know what that would mean, but identify the kids that are struggling. That was done. They brought this kid was drawing pictures of bullets going through people, writing shit like the world is dead. And they brought the parents in. So, identified struggling kids. Okay, bring in the parents. That's done. Show them irrefutable proof of this problem. I didn't know that had to be in the formula, but let's just say that it was. That was done too. They showed them the drawings. The kid's sitting there. These parents have intuitions, or they're supposed to. So they did that. And then the parents do nothing. So then what do? I mean, the school told the parents to take the kid home. They didn't want to take the kid home. He had the fucking gun in his backpack. That day, he goes to the bathroom, he comes out, he starts shooting everybody. What are we supposed to do? How many of those are supposed to happen? What about the parents of the 4 kids that died? So how many of those do we deal with? And what else is there to do? We're in a corner. You can't stop people from having a gun. It's in the Constitution. You can't limit people's freedom to move without a ton of evidence. It violates their rights. So, if your child gets a hold of your gun and uses it to kill people, you go to jail. What else is there to do? Apparently, she wrote, text messages to the kid that day. I guess they went home and checked to see if the gun was there, found out it wasn't. I don't know if they heard about the shootings beforehand or after, but she sent a text message to her son saying, "Ethan, don't do it." Nothing else. He didn't text her. She just sent that. "Ethan, don't do it." What could she have been talking about? She goes home, she finds out the gun's not there. Immediately, she's like, he's going to kill those people. What had she seen before that made her think maybe this kid was off, that she did nothing fucking about? So if what it takes is putting a few parents in jail to make them lock guns away that their kids cannot get to them, maybe this is it. And if not, there is some justice to what's happening with these school shootings. Some monicum of justice. I couldn't imagine it if it was one of my kids. Nothing would be just after that. But this seems to be the only logical step. I hope that they are found guilty. They owned the gun. He got to it and killed people with it. That is all I need. I don't know if that is the law in Michigan right now. If it's not, it needs to be. What else can we do? All right, well, that's the list for today. I appreciate you tuning in. If you would, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.